Welcome to Bed Crime Stories Podcast. I'm your host, T. Over here at Bed Crime Stories, we do all things true crime. If that's your jam, consider subscribing. Also, if you find you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, please share, please sign up for notifications, yada yada yada. You know the drill. Sebastian Rogers has been missing almost 2 months now, and there's no sign of him. It's like he just went poof in the night. As they say on Duck Dynasty, he gone. Now, there's another case of a missing child that is eerily similar to this one. It involves a 5-year-old boy named Joe Clyde Daniels. And in 2018, Joe Clyde, like Sebastian, went missing from his house. He lived in Dickson County, Tennessee, and he's never been seen again. Joe Clyde, like Sebastian, was autistic, and he was said to have wandered away from his house at night, barefoot, and in his PJs. He didn't have a flashlight like Sebastian, but there are so many similarities. When Joe Clyde vanished, there was no physical evidence to explain what happened and where he went. In Joe Clyde's case, the investigation quickly turned criminal, and that's because Joe's father confessed to doing his son in. But then, in a blink of an eye, the dad recanted his confession. He's like, sorry, no, mistake. I said I did it, but I really didn't do it. And you should really believe me this time. But you know, the cops don't work like that. Once you confess, you're going to have a hard time getting out of it. But by then it was too late. He was going to trial. And after his trial, he was found guilty and he was sentenced to 51 years in prison. Now, despite all of this, Joe Clyde's remains have never been found. Now, you'd think when the father confessed, the cops would have been like, well, take us to his body right now to prove it. But they didn't do that in the moment, and then the father had time to think about it. He recanted the confession, and therefore doesn't sound like he was ever going to say where Joe Clyde is. The father's lawyers now are arguing that mistakes happened during the trial. They said that the father's confession was coerced after many hours of questioning, and that there was no physical evidence, no blood, no weapon, no body, but they did have one powerful card up their sleeves. And that was testimony from Joe Clyde's brother, who said that he saw his dad, and I'm going to put it like this, using his hands aggressively on Joe Clyde, and then this same brother said that he watched as his father walked away carrying Joe Clyde. Now, Joe Clyde's mother was also charged in connection with the case, and she pled no contest, and she's serving a 15-year sentence. Joe Clyde's case was really big in Tennessee, so it seems likely that Katie and Chris Proudfoot would have heard about it. They are probably well aware of the prison sentences that Joe Clyde's parents received. Parents doing in their own child, whether deliberately, out of rage, or accidentally, happens, sadly, all too regularly in the United States. It's called Filicide, by the way, and mothers are almost as likely to be the perpetrators of the crime as fathers are. According to a study in the Journal of Forensic Science International, more than 40% of the time the perpetrator was the mother, and 57% of the time the perpetrator was the father. Now, this study looked at cases between the years 1976 and 2007, and during that period, a parent doing in their child occurred 500 times each year in the United States. In the majority of the cases, the child was 6 years old or younger, but more than 13% of victims were between the ages of 18 and 40. And get this, only 10% of victims were done in by a step-parent. So this whole thing about the evil step-parent isn't necessarily true, at least when it comes to filicide. That means that 90% of victims were the biological children of the perpetrator, and sons were more likely to be done in than daughters. According to the study, parents used, quote, personal weapons, end quote, to harm their kids. Now, there are many reasons why parents harm their offspring, and forensic psychiatrist Philip J. Resnick who's a pioneer in the study of filicide, came up with the following 5 major reasons for it. Number 1, altruism. This is when the parent harms the child because he or she believes that it is in the best interests of the child. So this could be, for example, if a child has terminal cancer, if the parent thinks the child is in pain and is suffering, they might take it upon themselves to do away with the child, to put the child out of their suffering. The second reason is acute psychosis. A parent may harm their child based on ideas inconsistent with reality. For example, a parent may believe that their child is possessed, and so in order to get rid of all of that, they have to get rid of the child. Number 3, parents commit filicide sometimes when there is an unwanted child. This is when a parent harms a kid that he or she regards as a hindrance. Number 4, accidental. The child's death is an unintentional outcome of a parent's behavior. And 5, spousal revenge. The parent harms the child to exact revenge on the other parent. Now, as I think about all of these statistics and applying them to the Sebastian Rogers case, it makes me think that it's not so far-fetched to believe that the mother, Katie Proudfoot, could allegedly be responsible for whatever made Sebastian get gone. As Don Wells would say, she was the only person with him in their locked house. She said he went out of the house barefoot, but with a flashlight. If Sebastian walked out of that house barefoot, it wasn't because he wanted to. We know he was terrified of being barefoot outside. Imagine how being barefoot outside in the dark would have been for him. And how is Katie so sure he took a flashlight? Could she have handed that flashlight to him as she sent him outside at night barefoot? Could this have been an extra cruel punishment? Like, instead of giving Sebastian a timeout or asking him to stand in a corner, she said, "You're going to go outside without your shoes. Here's a flashlight. That'll teach you a lesson." For little Sebastian, this likely would have been a terrifying scenario. I doubt he would have gone willingly. Seth Rogers has said Sebastian was involved in an incident wherein he pulled out his private part to compare with the other kids. As a victim of SA, Sebastian may have become more aware of these things, and he might have been acting out in this manner. Did Sebastian get in trouble at school for this? Is that how Seth Rogers knows about it? And was sending Sebastian outside someone's idea of an appropriate punishment to drill into Sebastian's mind that this type of behavior is wrong? Could such a form of punishment come from the mind of someone who didn't have the heart or capacity to love Sebastian with his autism, with his special needs, with his occasional tantrum, with him sometimes still soiling himself at school? If Katie Proudfoot had anything to do with Sebastian's disappearance, to me it seems likely it would either be because it became clear that Sebastian, with his special needs, was going to be a very needy child forever, that he would grow into a needy adult. And could she and Chris Proudfoot have seen Sebastian as a hindrance to the life that they wanted to live? Or two, did Katie accidentally do something that led to Sebastian's death? All of this is allegedly. No one has been charged in connection with any type of crime. I'm simply speculating based on information from that study. If we consider Occam's razor, which says that the most likely explanation is usually the correct one, then we'd have to say that something happened to Sebastian while he was with his mother and in the Proudfoot home. By the way, apparently this truce between Seth Rogers and the Proudfoots might be over because it sounds like Katie has hightailed it back to the RV park. She is not picking up the phone when Seth Rogers calls. So much for working together. Some people think that the Proudfoots may have set Seth up by telling him they were going to work with him. And then he does this whole FU to the public, and then they drop him like a hot potato, and he loses all the support, or some of the support, of people who kind of heralded him as a good parent, as a caring parent, as the only parent hitting the streets and looking for Sebastian. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories.